In 1985, Jefferson Starship released a song titled, "We Built This City." And in 1989, in the Field of Dreams movie, we were advised that if you build it, he will come. Since Arkansas has become a state, or became a state, Little Rock has had a series of significant right turns and wrong turns. Arkansas and Michigan entered the Union together in 1836. Arkansas was a slave state. Michigan was a free state. In the first legislative session in Michigan, the legislature established a university at Ann Arbor. In the first Arkansas legislative session at the old State House in Little Rock, there was a fatal brawl in which the Speaker of the House killed the representative from Randolph County with a Bowie knife because they were debating, and it got personal, the bounty of wolves. How much bounty you would get if you killed a wolf. Now, remind you, Michigan was establishing a university. Arkansas was killing each other. And we have been paddling upstream ever since. In 1871, we finally, as a state, got around to a system of higher education, and the University of Arkansas was established. Cities and communities were invited to bid on the University of Arkansas, and 3 places, Batesville, Fayetteville, and Prairie Grove, passed bond issues. Little Rock had an election for a bond issue to locate the University of Arkansas here. And the vote was 756 no and 78 yes. So, just think what it could have been in a place where you had the state capitol and the state's flagship university. Instead of us worrying about in Little Rock whether there would be one football game at War Memorial Stadium, we might be talking about what it's like in Austin or in Madison. And for almost 150 years, when you look at the education, the economic development, the cultural, and even the athletic advantages that the University of Arkansas has brought, it was a very wrong turn that we made. We go to the early 1950s, and Little Rock civic leadership put on its regional hat and said, we want to compete for a new Air Force base. And we're going to do something really different. We're going to partner with the area cities and regions. And so in Jacksonville, Little Rock Air Force Base was established. And over 60 years, it has been an economic engine. It has been a credit to this region. It has survived budget cuts and base closings, and it continues to thrive. And it has made a difference. It opened in 1955, and many of the well-known defense and Air Force experts have passed through Little Rock Air Force Base in their careers. But 2 years later, in 1957, following the Brown v. Board decision of 54, Little Rock had a chance to be a shining star. But instead, we succumbed to mobs, to violence, to boycotts. We succumbed to the worst in us. And the decisions made in 1957 by many in this city, not all, but by many in Little Rock, were based on hate and heritage. And it was not only a wrong turn, it was a massive wrong turn. All because 9 African American children had the courage to walk up those steps and get what every American was constitutionally granted, a free and equal education. What happened in Little Rock became the greatest constitutional crisis since the Civil War. But what really happened in Little Rock is that we are still fighting that battle today. And we are still paying the price of a terrible wrong turn. In the 1960s, when Little Rock's economic issues were cratering because of the repercussions of 57, Dwight Eisenhower had a plan to put interstates all over the country to make movement possible. And somewhere, somehow, some way, I-30 and I-40 intersected in Little Rock, or near Little Rock. I don't know whether that somebody just dropped something out of the sky. I don't know whether it was a political decision, but whatever it was a right turn because it brought commerce to the area and it made it easier for leisure travelers who were moving across the country to see, pass through, and visit Little Rock. And after 57, Little Rock needed that. At the same time, another interstate was built. It was built through the city. It was designed because everyone thought the growth would be out west. Some thought we got to get out of the inner city. And some thought that it would encourage commerce and development and that we needed an economic boom. Now, if you look at it in terms of growth out west and you look at it in terms of moving traffic out west, you might say it was a right turn. But if you look at it, at how it's divided the city, how it has become our own Berlin Wall, how it has separated people, the haves, the have-nots. Look at jobs, look at property values, look at education, look at all the criteria, look at the attitudes of the people. South of 630 has suffered. And so for many people, it was a very bad, wrong turn. In the late 1960s, thanks to the efforts of Senator John McClellan and Senator Bob Kerr of Oklahoma, the largest at the time, I believe, inland pork barrel project in America took place. It was the navigation of the Arkansas River from Tulsa to the Gulf of Mexico, all the way through. And this huge project was designed not only for shipping, but it was designed for hydropower, it was designed for recreation, and it was designed for flood control. I don't know whether it has lived up to its economic development terms, but I do know in terms of flood control and life on the river and recreation, it was a right turn. It was a very good turn. And so we go to the 70s, and we look at a guy by the name of Fred Smith, who was in Little Rock, and who had an idea that he developed in college, by the way, that said, I think I can get packages delivered overnight. And he came up with a concept. Now, we could debate what Little Rock did wrong, but what more is important is what Memphis did right. And what Memphis did right was make the airport modifications to make it happen. We had an opportunity to have a $50 billion revenue company today in Little Rock. We made a wrong turn. I keep thinking right now that if we had the opportunities of the Arkansas Innovation Hub and Noble Impact, that maybe a young guy like Fred Smith in 1971 would have been encouraged to stay here. But in 71, we also did something well. We looked at a nonprofit that was looking to relocate, and we brought a fledgling nonprofit to Little Rock based on the concept of passing the gift. And what a great decision that was. What a great right turn that was. And when Heifer opened its international headquarters here, we realized that Little Rock has one of the nation's finest nonprofits around. It was a right turn to invest in Heifer. In the 1980s, Harry Ward had a vision to take UAMS and to turn it from just a charity hospital into a world-class medical center. And that was a major change in direction. And that transformation, followed by the other chancellors, including Chancellor Ron, who's there today, that transformation has had a significant impact on this city, not only being a large employer, but being a draw for medical care from all over the region and the country. The work in myeloma, the work in cancer, the work with eyes is really a major, major asset and a right turn generated by Chancellor Ward to take it to a new level. In 1993, the visionary Buddy Valines, county judge, who I don't think has gotten or has received near the credit that he deserves. But Buddy Valines took the 51 model of Little Rock Air Force Base and said, let's go regional and let's do something big. Let's build an arena and concert center on one side of the river, and let's expand the convention center on the other side of the river. And let's do it together. And the River Project was passed. Today, when you go to Verizon Arena, to concerts, and you go to conventions at the convention center, it was because Little Rock took a right turn and did the right thing and cast the right vote, unlike what we did in 1871 when we said, no, we don't want the University of Arkansas. And so that leads us now to 1997, when a guy named Clinton, who could put a presidential library anywhere, chose to put his in Little Rock, to anchor a downtown district in what an area of an old warehouse district that one newspaper columnist called Murky Bottoms. Well, it was murky bottoms to some, but to many it was the beginning of the revitalization of downtown. It was the beginning of a belief that Little Rock could believe in itself again. It was the beginning that we could take old vacant buildings and main streets and Capitol Avenue and river markets and do something positive. It was the belief that it could attract hotels and restaurants and museums and bars. And it was the belief that someday, somewhere down that road, we might even redo Robinson Auditorium and make it into a great performing arts center. Since Bill Clinton announced his library and school coming to Little Rock, the Cranes have never left downtown Little Rock. And we can go to South Main. We can now see it going up Capitol Avenue. We are watching Robinson Auditorium take place under our very eyes. This is a magnificent development. It was the right decision for Little Rock to support that library, despite the political consequences that some people felt or the opportunities that some people thought that a political operation would have. It was the right turn. It has proven to be in $3 billion in economic development, the right turn. And when you think about that and you look at it, as most of us do every day, including sitting in this auditorium today, and the work that Bobby Roberts at the Central Arkansas Library, the work that many others have done, when you look at, again, go back to the vision of Buddy Valines, there were people that wanted to tear down these bridges. Not just the Clinton Park Bridge. They wanted to tear them down. And Buddy Valines said, no, not under my watch are you tearing these bridges down, because at some point we may turn them into pedestrian bridges. And even at some point, we may get someone to light them at night to become a showplace for the city. And so we have a river that runs through it with a river trail alongside of it with bridges across it, with Argenta coming back, with a downtown baseball park. Thank you, John McClellan, for navigating the river, for making that happen. That was a right turn. Thank you, Buddy Lyons, for having the vision to save the bridges. That was a right turn. And so we are positioned for the future. So, it's your turn. What are the next turns? The next turns, in my opinion, are wide open, but if I were thinking entrepreneurism, I would think Privacy Star. If I were thinking social entrepreneurism, I would think West Rock Coffee. Starbucks started small. If I were thinking education, I would think eVersity. Because I think the new distance learning campus has every bit as potential as an Old Main in 1871. Because the world is turning digital and online, and where better to nurture that campus that is located right here in Little Rock. If I were thinking education, I'd think eVersity. If I were thinking economic development, I would think public transit. A great city has got to have a great transit system. And Little Rock needs to invest in public transit for several reasons. One, for workforce movement, but number two, public transit, again, in the future is going to be a wave, just like great downtowns. The young people need to invest in public transit. That makes a great city. And if I were thinking tourism for the future, the right turn I would make Little Rock again, a retail destination. Everybody's got a Best Buy now, but not everybody has a Bass Pro. Not everybody has a neat outlet mall with Brooks Brothers and Gap that people will come to. We made right turns investing in retail. We made a wrong turn letting Costco go. So, retail destination is a tourism. So, it's your turn. History is a valuable teacher. We can learn from it. We don't have to repeat it, but it's your turn for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. As someone, as I said when I introduced you, someone who truly loves this city and really wants to see those right turns be made. When I came home to Little Rock in 2002 and I saw the River Market project and how it had changed, and in just 8 years since I had left, it was just a radical departure from the city that I left, the one that I came home to. When you look at today, 2015, do you get the sense that we've learned some of those lessons from the past, and where are the pitfalls that maybe in the community we're not recognizing that we might stumble into?
Well, I think as a community, we have to think we rather than I. And we tend to think about what's important to me, my school, my neighborhood, my area. That's why I believe we have to look at big turns in big subject areas like economic development, like public transit, like eVersity. We've got to think bigger than what we think. We think too small. Look, when we were doing the River Project and the River Market Project, people would walk along. I would walk down when the library was under construction and would walk through the River Market or walk down Clinton Avenue, and people would say to me all the time, "This ain't going to work. This is not going to work." And I would just say, "Just give us a shot." Near the end of the project, people were coming by me saying, "You need to put a coffee shop here. You need to do this. You need to do that." We need to catch the spirit. Right. So, yes, I think I think we've shown people. I think people have shown people how to do it. I just don't think we can stop.
So, as far as pitfalls, as far as what kind of things can you see in the 5-year, 10-year window that maybe we're not thinking about that we need to be addressing right now? What are mistakes that we could make?
Well, we're going to have, there will be an election on public transit, and most people, you take a poll right now, and it'd be 70-30 against it. there are probably a lot of people that have never ridden the trolley or the bus. It's foolish. I mean, we need to have public transportation. We need to support it all. We ought to get out there and vote for it. We ought to, when the public schools come forth with a millage thing, but we ought to get out there and vote for it. I mean, we're paying for that vote in 1871. We're still paying for it. I mean, we're spending I wish we'd spend as much time working on public transportation and our own situation as worrying about whether we play a football game here or not.
Absolutely. You're here. So your challenge to my generation on what to do next, and when we think about what the vision 25 years from now for Little Rock is, what do you think Little Rock's 25-year destiny looks like? Where do we stack up in terms of cities in the region and across the country?
Well, first of all, I think when you need to start worrying is when you don't see any cranes. Right. When La Harpe is not blocked. That's when you need to start worrying.
The traffic problems are gone. We should worry.
You will not hear me gripe about a traffic problem over construction in downtown Little Rock. You will never hear that gripe out of me, because that means, I sat for too long and watched the downtown just die. Well, I'm pretty excited about what's happening now. So you all, if don't be satisfied with the status quo. Just because somebody did it doesn't mean that your burden of responsibility is only to enjoy it. You've got to get out there and figure out what we can do next and what's next on the agenda. And there's plenty of things that next on the agenda. I personally believe that public transit is the area where your generation can make a big difference. That's the area that we have to do better in.
As a creative and someone who firmly believes that Little Rock has a tremendous creative base of talent and a future, I'm really excited about the creative corridor that we're building with agencies like CJRW moving into that area and a number of different developments happening there. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, again, I think if there had been the Warwick Sabins of the world in 1971, I think Fred Smith might have had a different conversation. So the more we can encourage that, the better. But in order to, just putting up an office building is not the answer. We got to have quality of life issues. You got to have the bike trails. You got to have the transit. You got to have the downtown living. You got to have good opportunities. That's why we at the Clinton School do this speaker series, not just for our students, but to enrich the whole area, to bring people so people can get new ideas and new thoughts and new visions. And so my worry about it is that we're just going to rest on our laurels, and that would be a terrible wrong turn.
That's one of my fears too. And on that note, I wish you could give this speech twice, and I would love to see you take this around the community and really be a champion to rally us around that, to embrace that, because I really want to see this city stand up and go to war and build it the way that it needs to be.
And I would say this: you don't need me. You need you.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.